What if the secret to deeper emotional intimacy in your marriage wasn't about having better conversations, but about creating a space where both of you finally felt safe enough to be real? That's what we're talking about today, emotional safety. It might not be the phrase that you're searching for, but if you've been feeling disconnected, like you're walking on eggshells or managing your husband more than enjoying him, it's almost certainly what's missing. So, welcome to the Softening into Love podcast. I'm your host, relationship coach Laura Amador. And today you'll learn what emotional safety actually looks like in a marriage, the quiet mistakes that erode it without either of you even realizing it, and the specific practical ways that you can begin creating it starting today for yourself and for him. Because both of you need to feel safe in order for love to truly flourish. The tips I'm going to give you today aren't about performing or pretending that you're a different person. It's really about coming back to your truest, most alive version of yourself and building a marriage where you both feel free to do the same. So you might know the feeling where you want to share something with him, but you're not sure how he'll respond, so you just hold it in. Or maybe he seems distant and you're not sure if you should bring it up or just let it go. And the air between you feels heavy, conversations feel stiff or like negotiations. And somewhere underneath of all of this is a quiet ache for the ease and closeness that you used to have or always hoped for. That ache is a signal that emotional safety needs tending. Emotional safety is this felt sense that you can be honest and vulnerable and fully yourself in your marriage without fear of rejection, ridicule, or retaliation. When it's present, love flows. When it's absent, even the smallest interactions can feel loaded. And here's what most people don't realize emotional safety isn't something that just happens in a good marriage, it's something that gets created and tended to and sometimes rebuilt. And it takes purpose and intention. So, first, I want to talk about the mistakes that can quietly chip away at emotional safety in a marriage. Now, before we talk about what builds emotional safety, let's be honest about what erodes it, because most of these are things that we do with the very best intention. The first is to try to fix, advise, or correct him constantly. And that sends a subtle but powerful message. And that message is, I don't trust you to figure this out. Or when it comes from love, the cumulative effect of always having a better idea or a suggestion or a gentle redirection is that your husband stops feeling capable or respected by you. And then he might stop sharing altogether. Another mistake is suppressing your own feelings in order to keep the peace. This is one of the most common patterns that I see in wives who want harmony so badly that they silence themselves to get it. But a woman who chronically overrides her own needs and thoughts doesn't become peaceful, she becomes resentful. And resentment is one of the greatest threats to emotional safety in a marriage. Another mistake is over explaining and over processing emotions out loud. This can actually overwhelm the emotional space in a marriage, particularly if your husband is someone who processes internally. When every interaction becomes an emotional deep dive or state of the union affair, he may begin to feel like he's constantly failing to keep up and start avoiding conversations altogether. Another mistake is scorekeeping, even if it's just silently. It keeps both of you trapped in a ledger of wrongs rather than a practice of grace. When your husband feels like he's always one mistake away from a conversation about everything he's done wrong, he can't relax into the marriage, and then neither can you. Another mistake is ignoring your own vulnerability. This teaches your husband that your emotions aren't real information. So when you do express a need or hurt, it doesn't land with the weight it deserves. Authenticity expressed with love and wisdom is what creates trust. And the beautiful thing is that all of these patterns can shift, and it starts with you. These are all things that are within your control. Now, I divided this up into two parts. This is creating emotional safety for yourself and then creating emotional safety for him so that the marriage can feel like this beautiful, safe space for both of you to be yourselves, to feel loved as yourselves, and where you can relax and breathe and rest. Let's start with creating emotional safety for yourself. This is where so many wives miss it. You can't create an emotionally safe marriage if you don't feel safe within yourself, your nervous system, your limits, your emotional honesty, your desires. These are the foundation of everything else is built on. And sometimes the most profound act of self care happens in the middle of your most painful season. I'm thinking of a woman I coached who was living through one of the hardest things a wife can experience. Her husband had decided to sleep in a separate bedroom. And night after night, she lay awake in the room, looking up at the ceiling, heart racing, mind spinning, crying, and catastrophizing about what this meant and what was coming and whether her marriage was over. She was emotionally drained and physically exhausted and completely depleted. And without realizing it, she was showing up in her marriage running completely on empty. And that's not conducive to connection. The shift that changed things for her had nothing to do with her husband. It started with her making one brave decision to stop resisting the situation by thinking about it so much and worrying, getting so anxious about it, and to completely surrender to it and start tending to herself inside of it. So instead of staying up crying all night because he wasn't there, she decided to make this space beautiful for herself. She brought beautiful flowers in and set them on her nightstand. She placed a book there too, something lovely and absorbing so that she could fall asleep to a beautiful story in her mind instead of all of her fears. She carved out a little corner in the room for yoga and diffused calming essential oils. She played soft music and slowly transformed what had felt like a space of loneliness into something that felt almost sacred for her. And then something unexpected happened. She started to actually enjoy it, the rest and the quiet and the beauty that she had created in the space just for herself. She was getting better sleep and her nervous system was settling, and she stopped showing up to interactions with her husband from a place of anxiety and desperation and started showing up grounded, soft, and genuinely herself. And the atmosphere between them began to shift, not because she had changed his mind or directly fixed anything in the marriage just yet, but because she had stopped abandoning herself in the middle of her pain. She had given herself the gift of emotional safety through something that was painful. And that's what emotional safety for yourself can look like in practice, not just bubble baths or journaling on good days, but of course that's nice too, but choosing to tend to yourself with love and intention, even when and especially when life feels uncertain or uncomfortable. So here's how to start doing that in your own marriage. You tend to yourself like it really matters, like it's the most important thing, because it actually really, really is. Self care in a marriage isn't a luxury or a reward for when everything else is done and going well. It's the constant practice of keeping yourself resourced, joyful, and peaceful so you have something genuine to bring to your relationship. When you're depleted, you react. When your cup is full, you can respond from a place of groundedness and wisdom. Rest, beauty, creativity, faith over fear, friendship, play, these aren't indulgences. They're the raw material of a woman who's magnetic, grounded, and truly present in her marriage. So, what does your cup need today? Start there. Now, let's talk about another piece of this. Instead of swallowing a hurt feeling and letting it fester or letting it explode later in a way that creates even more distance, try simply saying, ouch. It might sound too small to matter or maybe even awkward at first, but I've seen it work in moments that felt impossible. One wife I know was on the receiving end of a sharp, dismissive comment from her husband during a stressful evening. And in the past, she would have gone quiet and felt the sting for days and felt resentful and eventually brought it up in a much bigger conversation. But instead, she just looked at him and softly said, ouch. And he stopped and looked at her. And then he said, I'm sorry, that was unkind. You didn't deserve that. And then the moment passed. There was no big argument, no wall, no days of distance and coldness. There was just honesty offered gently and received. There was deeper understanding between them and an expansion of the emotional safety. You don't need a big, long speech about how what he said was wrong or unjust. You just need the courage to say in real time that something hurt. It teaches your husband how to love you well. It reminds him that you are soft and vulnerable. It reminds yourself that you're safe to honor your truth. And it keeps the small hurts from quietly becoming walls. Now let's talk about something that makes a lot of women feel overwhelmed and exhausted and resentful. And this is taking on too much. If something feels like too much, if a commitment is going to leave you empty, or if a request is going to breed resentment, you're allowed to say, I can't, without guilt, without a lengthy explanation, just simply, I can't. This is not selfish, although For most women, the first time it feels huge. It feels terrifying. It feels like I'm not allowed to say that. But the truth is that saying I can't to things that are going to overwhelm you or make you feel resentful is living in integrity with yourself. A woman who honors her own limits teaches everyone and herself to honor them as well. And she stops accumulating the quiet resentment that slowly prisons connection. Next is to express your desires purely and simply. So instead of hinting and hoping or waiting to see if he notices, you might try simply saying, I would love, and then you fill in the blank with the end result. As in, I would love to watch a rom com. I would love to try out that new restaurant in town. I would love a clean kitchen. I would love to go to bed early. I would love company tonight. A pure desire expressed without pressure or expectation is one of the most feminine and powerful things you can do in your marriage. It's not demanding, it's inviting. And it gives your husband the beautiful opportunity to be your hero, which husbands genuinely want to be. He wants to make you happy. And although it might seem very obvious to you what would make you happy, and maybe you might even think, I've told him what would make me happy a million times. But the difference is being able to express that in a way that's completely free of control. And lastly, is to stop doing things that you'll resent. Martyrdom is not intimacy. When you chronically do things out of obligation rather than genuine love, and then feel invisible or unappreciated for the sacrifice, you're slowly building a case against your husband that he doesn't even know exists. So doing less, but with a full heart, is always better than doing more with a clenched one. Now let's talk about creating emotional safety for him. And here's the part that we don't always talk about. Your husband needs to feel emotionally safe in your marriage too. Safe to be imperfect, safe to make mistakes and to try, safe to be himself without feeling analyzed or corrected or managed. When he feels that safety, he can open up and lean in and relax. And he can become the husband that you've been hoping for, not because you've told him that he needs to do anything differently, but because you created the conditions where that version of him can actually show up. So here's how to create an emotionally safe environment for him. The first is to listen in order to understand, not to respond. One of the wives I coached came to me frustrated because her husband kept saying in an angry and defeated tone, I can't say anything to you. And it stung every time he said that. She wanted so badly to defend herself, to explain and to tell him that that wasn't fair. But instead, she tried something different. She started simply saying, I hear you, and then going quiet. No rebuttal, no counter story, no trying to set the record straight, just her presence and her listening ear. And the change was almost immediate. He started talking more, the walls came down slowly, and that phrase, I can't say anything to you, stopped appearing altogether. He didn't need her to agree with him or to fix anything. He just needed to feel like she was actually receiving him and that she cared and wanted to know what he thought. Usually, husbands aren't looking for their wives to solve their problems or even to validate that they're right. They're looking to feel respected and understood. A simple I hear you offered with stillness and genuine attention does a lot more for emotional safety than almost any other practice I know. Next is to say whatever you think and mean it. When your husband has a plan, a decision, or an idea that he's working through, one of the most powerful things you can offer him is genuine trust. Whatever you think, not as a passive withdrawal, but as a real expression of confidence in him. This communicates something really profound. It says, I see you as capable. I trust your judgment. For a man who may have felt quietly criticized or second guessed, this kind of trust is like oxygen. It gives him room to rise. And on that note, the next is to be specific with gratitude. Gratitude isn't just a nice, polite practice. In marriage, it's a relational superpower. And the more specific you are, the more deeply it can land. So, not just thank you for dinner, but I really loved that you thought of that. It made me feel so taken care of. Not just thanks for fixing that, but I love how capable you are. I feel so safe knowing how you handle things like that. When a man feels genuinely appreciated, he wants to keep showing up. Gratitude is the fuel of a husband who feels inspired rather than obligated. Next is to speak light into the best version of himself. with a self fulfilling prophecy. The words you speak about your husband, both to him and about him, shape who he becomes in your marriage. When you consistently see and name the best in your husband, he begins to live up to that version. I think of a wife who started saying to her husband warmly and sincerely, I love how we really treat each other with respect. The first time she said it, he paused and simply said, Me too. And she kept saying it, and slowly it became true in a deeper and fuller way than it ever had been before. Sometime later, she overheard him giving marriage advice to a younger couple, and there he was, her husband, saying with quiet conviction, respecting each other's the most important thing. It had become his truth because she had spoken it into their relationship and spoken it into being. What you water in your husband is what grows. The vision that you hold for your marriage, spoken aloud with love and consistency, has a power that you might be underestimating. Next is to receive his efforts graciously. When your husband does something thoughtful, like makes an effort or tries to show up in a way that matters to you, truly receive it. Let it land without minimizing it and without pointing out what's still missing, even if it's just to yourself. Don't deflect with humor or busyness, but truly, truly receive it. To smile and say thank you and let him see that what he did worked. Because a husband who feels like his efforts never quite hit the mark will eventually stop making them. But a husband who's received with warmth and genuine appreciation will keep coming back to try again. Emotional safety is not a destination you arrive to all at once. It's a daily practice of small, intentional choices, like the ouch offered in a moment instead of swallowed for later, or the whatever you think spoken from genuine trust instead of exhaustion, the gratitude that goes beyond the surface into something real and specific. These aren't small things, they're the architecture of a deeply intimate marriage. And you, the woman hearing this right now, have a lot more influence over the emotional climate of your marriage than you might realize. Not through control or effort or management, but through presence and intention, through authenticity, and through becoming a woman who's safe to herself and therefore safe to everyone around her. That's the kind of wife who doesn't just save her marriage, she transforms it. So let's do a quick summary of everything we've talked about so far. Emotional safety is the invisible foundation of a deeply connected marriage. It erodes when we suppress our needs and our desires and our limits and overmanage our husbands or feel pressured or performative to be perfect. You can rebuild it by tending to yourself first, saying ouch when you're hurt, giving yourself permission to say I can't, and expressing desires purely and simply with I would love. You also create it for your husband through deep listening, genuine trust, specific gratitudes, and speaking light into him, receiving his efforts with warmth. And when you both feel emotionally safe, love stops being something that you have to work so hard for and it begins to flow naturally. Now, listening to this is a beautiful first step, but if you're feeling like you want more, I want you to know that that space exists. In my one on one coaching, we go beneath the surface together. We look at the specific patterns showing up in your marriage, the places where you've been abandoning yourself, and the beliefs that have been keeping you stuck. And then we build something new, a version of you that's so grounded and so alive and so clear in who she is that your marriage genuinely moves towards the vision that you have for it. And if you're ready to stop waiting and start building the marriage that you actually want, I'd love to connect with you. You can reach out to me in the link in the description. And if you want to go deeper on your own, I have a free guide called 3 Steps to Reignite Connection in Your Marriage. You can find the link to that in the description as well. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, keep softening into love.